Today we've got Matt from Shai Hulud. Super excited to chat with you again, Matt. It's been a couple years ago when we first chatted with you. Obviously, we chatted all about just the history of really at this point. I think you're the only original member of Shai Hulud. Is that right?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah, so we wanted to, when we chatted with you last time, we wanted to chat about the history of Shai Hulud, because since you were there at the very beginning to where you're at now. But obviously a lot of things have changed in the life of Shai Hulud, but we're just really excited to see you at Furnace Fest. So we'll talk about more of your upcoming Furnace Fest performance here in a couple months. Yeah, I just want to know, like, how's life right now in the life of Matt from Shai Hulud?
The life of Matt from Shai Hulud is pretty boring. You know?
I mean, it could be worse. It could be way too exciting where it's like, ooh, I don't know about what's going on right now.
I'm not a big fan of exciting. I rather enjoy boring. You know, I like my movies. I like Indian food. I partake in both when I can. And yeah, I no drama, not too much excitement. The most exciting thing that happened recently was the That Within Blood Ill Tempered, who is playing Furnace Fest. That lineup got together in Connecticut about 2 weeks ago for about 3 or 4 days. So I got to see and live with everyone for 3 or 4 days, and we practiced.
Nice.
And had a great time. That was pretty fun, and probably the most exciting thing that's happened in the past couple months.
How are the sands of Arrakis? Are they? Are you getting sand between your toes?
Yeah.
Are you squirming around doing your thing?
Yeah, walking without rhythm, you get a lot of sand between your toes that way.
You know, Matt, I know I made this comment last time we chatted. I just feel guilty about it, but you know, it's one of those things that has just like, God, I can't believe I think this thing. It's one of those things where I probably should like confess to a pastor or priest about. But like every time I see you, I'm like, especially when you play, I'm like, this guy looks like he works in IT, but is in like one of the best metal bands you've could ever hear in your life. And it's just like you're playing like just the most like amazing like just breakdowns, and then obviously you got like the metal parts that are just gonna like shred your face. It's just amazing how you're able to like create the sound that you do, and yet you look like you are just like taking phone calls all day about like Microsoft computers.
Yeah, well, I don't know a damn thing about Microsoft computers. Know a little bit.
That's good for Microsoft.
Yeah, I know a little bit about metal. But yeah, I always like to consider myself to be a normal guy. I mean, for a couple of years there, I think it was my early midlife crisis. I grew my hair back out. I can send you guys a picture. It was like down to here, to my little,
oh my God,
my little nips there. And yeah,
are they really that little?
You want to find out? No,
Yeah.
no. So, you know, there are times in my life where I looked more like a metalhead, but you know, I like to think that hardcore and or metal, I mean, it's a huge part of my life, and yeah. I primarily listen to metal daily. So, you know, I can't belittle that. But, you know, I also like musicals, and I like to think that there's more to me than just my love and playing of hardcore and metal.
Well, I'm glad you said it, because that's actually something I wanted to explore. Is, you know, everyone knows your prowess on the stage. Everyone knows your prowess in the recording studio and making some of the greatest guitar riffs, writing some of the coolest songs. What else do you, when you think of Matt Fox, what do you think of? Like what comes to mind first, other than, you know, badass metal guitar player?
I wish I were that.
You are, though.
That's what we think of you. I mean, maybe we're the only two people in the world that think of that, but I can't imagine we are the only two people in the world that think of badass guitar player.
To be fair, I'll out myself. I would say maybe 10 years ago, maybe a little more, I was a much better guitar player than I am now. But guitar playing has never been my strength. I don't know if I said this on the last podcast. I've said it before in other interviews, but my strength, so I hope, or I think anyway, has always been creativity in music. So the writing aspect, I can take some credit for that. There are a few things I've written that I'm proud of that I think are really cool and really fresh, even still to this day. But as anyone who's recorded with me in the studio can attest, I am not great in the studio. I make a lot of mistakes. There are tons of punch-ins. I can play it well when it's not recording, but as soon as the record button is hit, everything just falls to hell. So I don't mean to digress a little bit, but I feel it necessary to state and let everybody know that I am not a shredder. I am not a great guitar player by any means. If I have any merit, it's only in my creativity in writing.
So are you saying that you're expensive to record?
I have been. I definitely have been. In my old age, I'm a lot more permissive than I used to be. Like back when we recorded that within Blood Ill Tempered, I think that I was exceptionally particular. And if there was any like stray sounds or any ugliness in a chord, I would stop and say, we got to punch that in. But these days I tend to like what I guess a lot of people call the happy accidents, or, these little stray sounds, little noises that you make. Sometimes a chord, like I was saying, comes out a little uglier than you intended. These days, I kind of gravitate towards that. I feel like it gives it more character. But in the past, yes, I imagine recording me was expensive. I mean, it honestly, still is, I think.
Honestly, that's my favorite kind of like just heavy music in general, is when you actually can hear some of those like happy accidents, because when it's done really kind of in this way where it's like, oh, that actually works with the creativity of this song, it actually is way better than actually trying to make that song sound perfect.
Yeah.
I've said it a million times on this podcast before, but Cullen and I's favorite band, like as a friend group, is The Chariot. I don't know if you ever heard of The Chariot.
Of course. And I remember that was one of your favorite bands.
Yeah, and they were notorious for leaving. I mean, there's literally parts when like Josh Goggin, their vocalist, you could literally hear the spit hit his microphone when he would scream, and they would leave that in. And those were like the moments where it's like, this is why I love this music so much. And obviously it meant that it probably wasn't going to be very commercially viable, but what it did mean was it actually made this like way more intimate experience for the listener. And so that's why I love that kind of music, or the recording of heavy music in that way, where you can actually hear some of those, quote unquote, happy accidents.
Sure. I really appreciate them now. On the contrary, Eric Dellin, who in the current lineup of Shai Hulud that's not playing Furnace Fest, he plays bass. In the That Within Blood Ill Tempered lineup of Shai Hulud, he plays guitar. He, again, on the contrary, likes a very clean, modern recording. He and I are also in Zombie Apocalypse together. And when he's around, he's not too fond of the happy accidents. he likes everything to be, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but just to say that he likes things clean and modern, I think is pretty fair to say.
Sure.
But like I said, in the past, I was more like that and much less so now. Now I'm happy to let most things go, unless I just simply can't play the riff, which happens frequently too.
What do you think caused that change in you?
That's a good question. I don't know that I really have an answer to it. what you know what's
Is it like the budget of Shai Hulud in the recording studio?
yeah, it could be. No, one guy, when we recorded that within Blood Ill Tempered, there was a guy whose name I don't remember. He was a really cool, unique guy. I wish I could remember his name. But we were recording the end of the song Ending the Perpetual Tragedy. And another thing that I have changed is I tend to pick a lot lighter these days. I find that I can play better because I used to really dig into the strings. And sometimes that's good and appropriate. But I find, generally speaking, with some of the complexity in Hulud's music, if I play lighter, I play better. So back then, when we were recording the end of Ending the Perpetual Tragedy, I was really digging into the strings, and it didn't sound like an open E chord, what I was strumming. It sounded really dirty and ugly. And I told the guys that were recording me, there were two guys in the room at that time, and I said, I gotta repunch that in. It sounds bad, sounds ugly. And the guy simply said to me, sometimes ugly is beautiful. And I know that sounds kind of cliche, but I would definitely be lying if I said that it didn't make some sort of impact on me. That definitely stayed with me. And I fully understand where he's coming from now. Whereas 22 or 23, however old I was at the time, maybe 25, 26, 26-year-old kid, not only did I not know that or understand that, I didn't agree with it. So I can't remember if we ended up redoing those chords to make them sound prettier, but that statement, again, sometimes ugly is beautiful, definitely stuck with me. And when I'm recording these days, but if I hear those ugly chords or those happy accidents, I'm more prone to say, that's cool, I like that. Whereas I didn't used to do that before. So to answer your question directly, I don't know that I have the best answer, but that statement that the guy made about ugly being beautiful definitely made an impact.
Yeah, I do. I definitely think like there's a way where a recording can be done so poorly where it's distracting. Like the just the production of it is so distracting because of how poorly it's done. But done in a really tasteful way, it actually, again, like Cullen and I are saying, it really can actually add to the experience as a listener. I think of like the ones in my mind that when I think of like really poor production, even though I would imagine like the rest of this metal community would disagree with this, but I think a lot of that early black metal stuff, where it sounds like it's recorded out of one microphone live, sounds, I mean, it just, to me, it sounds garbled. It sounds just bad. And to me, the production of it is so bad that it's distracting. Whereas, again, I think of some of these happy accidents as not necessarily distracting. They actually really add to the listening experience as a fan. Whereas, I think if it's done in such a poor way, then it actually becomes distracting. And again, that's where I think of like some of the early black metal releases as just being like the production of that, it just feels distracting. Whereas, again, like something like from The Chariot or some of like even maybe potentially some of your recordings where there are some of these happy accidents, actually really adds a lot of value, I think.
I enjoy it. I even like, I'm not the biggest black metal fan, but I find that there's a lot of charm in the early Emperor recordings. They sound terrible. Like you said, record out of one mic, maybe just with a cassette player, a cassette recorder, who knows? But there's sometimes, for me anyway, the content can speak louder than the production, and that's how I feel about some of the early Emperor recordings. Like I think it's called "I Am the Black Wizards," maybe. I find the content so charming and so cool that I don't mind the production. Also, another album that I love, a friend of mine and former bandmate of mine, Steve Klysath, thinks I hate these guys, but I do not hate these guys. That would be Sepultura, the album Beneath the Remains. I absolutely hate the guitar sound. It sounds like a bad Metal Zone pedal. The guitar sound is so distracting to me. But again, the content is so good that I can still listen to the record. So that's how it works with me. And my That Within Blood Ill Tempered guitarist Eric Dellin, whose birthday is today, by the way.
Oh, happy birthday.
Yeah, if he pops on, we can embarrass him a little bit. But Eric Dellin pretty much hates everything that I grew up listening to, because he's about a decade younger than me. And the content doesn't seem to matter. He just hears reverb on the snare and I'm out. I can't listen to this. I don't want to put words in his mouth, but if he pops on, he'll tell you how he feels about all the things that I still to this day love. But to sum up, yeah, sometimes the content can outweigh the bad production. At least for me, it can.
Well, yeah. and going along with that idea of content being kind of like a saving grace sometimes, you have always been what I would consider a masterful lyrical writer.
Oh, thanks.
And I don't necessarily know where it comes from, because you seem like your personality that comes through on stage and comes through right here, right now, does not seem to match a lot of the topics and themes that you broach while writing. And I'm curious, where does that come from for you?
The lyrical approach?
Yeah.
Well, I think one thing that I recall from back in the day, because the only reason that I started writing, I used to write as a child, like every kid. I wrote poetry. I even wrote a poem that won 3rd place in a high school contest.
Hell yeah.
I got third place. I thought it should have been 1st place. I was really proud of that poem. But anyway, one thing that I recall from back in the day is, if we're going to be about quote unquote hatred, we've got to be smart. It can't be, it's going to come across really silly if the lyrics are poorly written or poorly thought out. So, and what I was saying, but I cut myself off, was the only reason I started writing lyrics is because our original vocalist, who's a good friend of mine still, the singer of As Friends Rust, a guy named Damien Moyal, he was writing the lyrics when he was the singer for the band. And when we parted ways with him, I just kind of took over because we needed lyrics. So yeah, without talking for an hour about it, we all agreed, inspired a lot by the hardcore band SFA from New York City, that we wanted to be, again, quote unquote, hate core, or we wanted to discuss hatred. I just knew that it might come across heavy-handed, and due to that, it just couldn't be poorly written. So I write light years above my ability to speak. I say I say, I stutter. I don't know what I'm talking about half the time. But when I'm writing lyrics, I can be smarter. I can think out the concepts rather than just doing it off the top of my head. So I'm really, really thankful that you appreciate the lyrics. I think those are my favorite compliments that, at least that I get from Shai Hulud, is when somebody appreciates or can relate to the lyrics, because I think that hits just a little deeper sometimes in the music. So thanks for the appreciation. I am grateful.
So you seem like you have a very bubbly personality and kind of a laid back personality. You seem like you're very go with the flow kind of individual. When I listen to Shai Hulud, I don't always know how, you know, your square peg fits in that round hole. You know what I mean? Like,
Sure,
like it seems like two very different people, and maybe it's a, you know, Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of thing. But I'm curious, like where does that inspiration for that kind of hatred come from?
Well, I'll say the best and the worst of me comes out in the lyrics. You know, like take a song like Reach Beyond the Sun. The lyrics are extremely positive and very immensely optimistic.
Yeah.
I like to think that I'm optimistic and a positive person, but I also have my obviously my dark times as well. But Reach Beyond the Sun is an example of the absolute best of me.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm trying to think, maybe a song like Set Your Body Ablaze or Misanthropy Pure, even though I think they still hinge on optimism, you know, feature the darker thoughts that I have. Or maybe a Profound Hatred of Man, where the first line is, if these hands would only kill. But we were just talking on this last practice that we just had with all the guys. We were playing an old song from our split with Indecision that came out, I think, in 98. The song is the first song on the split. It's called The Bonds of Those Who Have No Understanding of Consequence. And in that song, the words, I am a violent tendency, are written and spoken. And I don't know how old I was when I wrote that, but not only am I not a violent tendency by any stretch of the imagination, you know, I guess maybe at one point, I don't know if I was being dramatic or if I really felt like I'm on the edge, man. You know, I don't know. But yeah, the Dr. Dr. Jekyll. I was quoting a Men at Work song, Dr. Jekyll and Mr. No, it's the other way. Dr. Heckle and Mr. Jive is the Men at Work song. But maybe it's a Dr. Jekyll thing. Because, yeah, like I said, the best and the worst come out in the lyrics. I like to think these days that I do better than I am a violent tendency, however.
Yeah, there definitely does seem to be like kind of this this theme within just the history of like hardcore and even like metal of not just like, hey, there's like this aggression that I have, but also like here are the beauty, like here's the beauty of being a human being.
Sure.
And it's like kind of this weird like balance that you're like navigating. And that's not just, you know, hardcore metal that's trying to navigate that lyrical kind of balance. Like lots of different genres try to do that. But it is interesting how there's such a pronounced way of doing that, both in hardcore metal, and obviously you guys are kind of intertwining those. And I've got another question around that. But it is interesting how hardcore and metal really have this theme throughout its history of trying to balance both of those, both obviously because there is kind of this natural aggression to the music. I mean, it's very distorted music. There's breakdowns. There's this, you know, just kind of natural like angst to the music.
Yeah.
But also there's so much beauty to it as well, and you're balancing a lot of.
Yeah. Well, on the record, That Within Blood Tempered, there's a poem that is on the little flap of the CD. It must be on the vinyl somewhere, but it's definitely on the little flap of the CD. And I'm paraphrasing it because I don't recall it exactly offhand. but it says something like, "This is as bitter as it is beautiful." And it says, it talks about the contrast of feelings and how the things that are within blood ill-tempered are both bitter and beautiful. That the contradiction is there, the contrast is there. You know, when you have, of course, I don't consider myself to have ill-tempered blood, but you know, the contradiction in every human being is there. And that's why on That Within Blood Ill-Tempered, you've got a song like Ending the Perpetual Tragedy, which is criticizing violence and revenge and scornful of the virtue and motives of others, which is basically about cynicism, versus a song like this song, which is purely about all things beautiful. And that it all came from me. It all came from the same person. Well, people, I should say, because Matt Fletcher, longtime bass player, also contributed to the lyrics, as did Geert Vandervelde. So yeah, the contradiction is definitely there. One little anecdote I wanted to mention, kind of jumping back a little bit, about the dichotomy that you were saying between me as a person and the lyrics. It's funny. I used to work, and I probably, for all I know, I said this on the last podcast we did, but I used to work at a record store in South Florida. And, you know, as a record store guy, you get to be friends with people, especially that like the same music as you do. You know, you recommend stuff and you become kind of friends. So I became friendly with this guy, and, you know, we started hanging out. And one time he came back to my apartment and he walked into my room and he said, "You're kidding." And I said, "What?" You know, and he said, I can't believe that the guy who wrote a song called Solely Concentrating on the Negative Aspects of Life lives in this room, you know, filled with Muppets and Snoopy and Fonzie and Snow White and the Seven Dwarves and Superman, you know, all these kind of optimistic, positive things. And at that point, I was still pretty young. And I remember finding that really interesting. Like, wow, you know, so I have a dark side that's coming out in the music that is not necessarily in tune with my actual personality. So, at risk of repeating myself, there's, again, the best and the worst sides of me come out in the lyrics.
Do you almost think that there's like a fantasy that you're living with that too? Like
maybe the violent tendency part. I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like you maybe in some fantastical imaginative story that you tell inside your own head of like, if this, then if this happened, then I would have some violent tendencies. Let me tell you.
The only thing that makes me have violent tendencies are when people chew loudly.
You would hate Mason.
Oh yeah, pretty bad.
No, I'm just joking.
So, but if that's what like triggers the violent tendencies, there's a very real possibility that could happen at any point. Then, because you could be around anybody that is chewing, you know, just with their mouth wide open.
Yeah, it definitely instills some negative emotions in me. But I don't think I mean, I've never been a violent person, nor have I, to the best of my recollection, ever been a violent tendency. But as far as the fantasy aspect, there's definitely some fantasy. I mean, a lot of the lyrics that I write are almost little science fiction stories. Like, again, Reach Beyond the Sun is, you know, a story about a guy who's around a bunch of miserable people because they're all living under literally a black sun. You know, the sun has gone out. So there's some fantastical elements. And also in a song off Blood Ill-Tempered, Given Flight by Demon's Wings, you know, it says somewhere in the lyrics, "I'm not simply strong. I may very well be the strongest man that ever lived." Clearly I'm not, not on the inside or the outside. So yeah, you take the creative license and you embellish, for the emotion, because what are you going to say? I'm not simply strong, but, I get by. You have to, you take some dramatic license. And I think that it appeals to me anyway. I don't know if it appeals to anyone else, but that kind of drama in lyrics, especially when there's a vocalist screaming his, head off, creates a really nice emotion. So I think
100%.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, Matt, I was going to ask you a question, and I don't remember, Matt, last time we chatted with you, if you had talked about this or not, but obviously you were coming to Shai Hulud at a time where there was a very distinct division between metal and hardcore.
Sure.
And I think that's part of the reason why what makes Shai Hulud so unique and one of kind of the originators of, quote unquote metalcore, is because you merged these two genres in a way that actually worked really well. But you were at a time where when you were a kid, there was a very distinct difference between being a metal person and being a hardcore person.
Sure.
And they were not just, for the most part, from my understanding, and I wasn't around at that time, but my understanding is not just was there a difference in the sound between those two genres, but also there wasn't much crossover in between the fans. the fans even at times might have even had some animosity towards each other.
Sure. SOD.
So I'm just curious,
a song about it.
Right. So I'm just curious, what was it like to be a band like Shai Hulud, who was super early in trying to merge both of these genres and therefore both of these music scenes, where you're almost merging two communities in a lot of ways had animosity towards each other. What was that like in particular? And maybe that wasn't the experience of Shai, that totally could be a thing, but I'm just curious, that had to have been maybe potentially a thing in the late 90s when you guys got started?
Well, I have two responses to that. One, obviously, there were tons of bands, especially from New York City, that were merging hardcore and metal long before I probably even picked up a guitar. So, I'm grateful that you would consider us to be an originator of anything, but, that sound was definitely around long. The sound and the term metalcore were around long before Shai Hulud was. The next thing that I could say is that I always considered Shai Hulud to be a hardcore band. I don't think that, there's a couple heavier riffs on the Profound 7-inch and Hearts Once Nourished, the album, but I don't think it's all that metal. The metalcore thing or stigma came around That Within Blood Ill Tempered, when it really wasn't, in my opinion. What do I know, though? Having been with us in the studio when we recorded That Within Blood Ill Tempered. Yeah, that's for sure. But, more than incorporating metal into That Within Blood Ill Tempered, we were incorporating progressive ideas.
Yeah.
And I stole, I call us now, you'll never hear me refer to Shai Hulud as a metalcore band. If anything, I refer to us as a progressive hardcore band. And I guess with progressive ideas comes some more challenging parts, which can be confused with being metal, perhaps. But I remember when we went to go when we went to go master That Within Blood Ill Tempered, we mastered it in California. And I was with a guy from Revelation Records, a guy named Larry. Hi, Larry. And Larry was huge into hardcore. And he went to go have the album mastered with me. And when he heard the album as it was being mastered, he said, I'm so surprised at how hardcore this is. Like, we had the reputation of being extremely metal, and I think he was expecting to hear us sound something like Morning Again, who's so much more metal than we are. I mean, they have, proper Slayer-inspired riffs. I don't think Shai Hulud has anything inspired. I mean, I love Slayer, one of my all-time favorites, but I don't think we have anything necessarily that's inspired by Slayer, not musically. Well, not lyrically either. So, yeah, my take on it all is that we're more of a progressive hardcore band than we are metal. We did embrace the term metalcore back then, but I don't think I was aware that it wasn't as metal as maybe we had thought. The whole progressive hardcore thing came much later, as I was looking back in retrospect thinking, you know what, it's not that metal, it's more progressive.
You see, and I think Mason and I have maybe this perspective. To us, it almost seems like some, neckbeard guy clacking away behind his keyboard, trying to almost cause derision and division wherever possible. I don't care what the genre is. If I like it, I like it, And I don't understand the argument where we have to silo an already alternative music scene into smaller and smaller silos.
Sure.
It never made sense to me, and I know Mason feels the same way. It just break out of that. And I think that what Mason and I are trying to get at here is we're just thankful that Shai Hulud and many, many other bands, but Shai Hulud is one of those bands that certainly said, well, fuck it. Like, who cares what the genre is if you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. Right.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, and furthermore, what I think, again, whether Shai Hulud originated metalcore or not, like, that's here and over there.
Sure.
But what it is to say is that you guys were very early on, a part of something that has really changed metal and hardcore, both metal and hardcore music, to the point where now, like, honestly, seriously, like, I kid you not, when I listen to the, like, new Knocked Loose album, I hear, like, if Shai Hulud's, like, early stuff was recorded in 2024, that to me sounds like what Knocked Loose is at now.
Oh, okay.
Right? Like, you guys, and that's not, like, I don't know what you guys think about Knocked Loose. Maybe you guys like them or not, but, like, it is to say, Knocked Loose at one point this year was charting higher than Taylor Swift, who is the biggest music artist of almost of all of history. Like,
wow.
And Knocked Loose was charting higher than her.
Yeah.
A band that literally does not sound all that different other than the production value of 2024 from a band like Shai Hulud. That blows my mind that a band like that can sound like that can have that level of success.
Hey, there's hope for us yet.
Again, I would argue whether or not Knocked Loose is actually influenced by Shai Hulud, although I wouldn't be surprised if they are. Whether or not they are, like, they clearly have had some level of influence by other bands that were then therefore influenced by Shai Hulud. So anyway, that's all to say, like, it's incredible, like, what you guys were doing created something that eventually became something that was actually really possible within the music industry to be, like, even semi-successful, and still saying, like, true to that, like, really kind of, like, gritty and underground sound that you guys all created.
Well, thanks, man. That's some kind words there. I appreciate it.
Well, speaking of Furnace Fest, let's chat a little bit about it.
Sure.
Obviously, that was kind of the main reason why we wanted to bring you guys on. What are you guys looking forward to Furnace Fest? Maybe there's, like, maybe some songs that you guys haven't played in a while. Maybe there's even potentially newer songs that you haven't played that you're planning on playing. Or maybe it's just, like, generally, like, being at the festival and, like, you're going to be able to see lots of friends that you haven't seen for a while. Like, I'm just curious, like, what are you all looking forward to?
Well,
the festival?
my absolute favorite thing to do, and I've done it probably when Furnace Fest originated back in the early 2000s, and the last couple times that we were fortunate enough to play, is sitting in the catering area and seeing a bunch of people, meeting new people in bands that I like or had just never met before, and seeing old friends. I could sit at the catering table for hours and just have a rotating, rotating chairs of different people, oh, hey, Matt, how's it going?
As long as the caterers are keep bringing you food, right? That's why you sit there, right?
Hell yeah.
For hours.
Feed me and talk to, and mustard always. Feed me and talk to me. No, but that's my absolute favorite thing to do. I mean, I like to catch some of the bands, of course, but I remember like the first Furnace Fest back that we played. I was talking to my friend Vadim, who plays in Poison the Well. I was talking to Marty from Zao. I was talking to just so many different people, and I looked at the time, and 3 or 4 or 5 maybe hours had passed while I'm just sitting at this table, bonding with people that I haven't seen in a long time or hadn't even met yet. I think the first time I actually really met Marty was at the first new Furnace Fest, and we had a blast, and that's so. I don't want to take up too much more time, but speaking for myself, meeting and chatting with people in the quiet area is my absolute favorite thing to do at Furnace Fest.
I love that.
Are there any potential surprises that fans of Shai Hulud could expect at this year's Furnace Fest? Maybe
if it's a surprise, Mason,
maybe it's Matt stage diving. What is it that
Matt,
fans could
you
expect?
gotta stage dive.
Did I ever tell you my stage diving story? I don't know if I told you on the last.
I don't think so.
I think you maybe had mentioned it last time. Didn't you say that like? I forget how it went, but I do remember there being some kind of stage diving story last time.
Okay, well, in brief, to recap, there is a local band from Florida who I still love to this day, called Quit. And I was about 20 years old, and I jumped on stage and I stage dove at like the perfect time in regards to the rhythm. Was like, it was all set up to be the most glorious stage dive. And when I looked while I was in midair at who I was landing on, it was 3 girls who screamed and scattered.
Right. Oh, I do remember this.
They screamed and scattered, and I landed on my hands, knees, and face. And I got up and started moshing like that's what I intended to do.
And that's the last time you stage dove, right?
Aside from one other time where somebody, I don't know if it was somebody in the band or if it was somebody from the crowd, but somebody threw me into the crowd with my guitar, and I was absolutely terrified. Some of us are built to mosh, and some of us are not, and I am clearly not. So there will be no stage diving.
Well, you just said that someone successfully threw you into a crowd.
Yeah.
So
why do I feel
I'm not going to give the listeners any ideas. Wink, wink,
shit.
nudge, nudge. Say
All
no
right.
more.
So now it's all out there. But as far as real surprises, I don't want to give anything away as far as what we'll be playing and stuff. But I think there's definitely going to be a couple surprises in there for some people. We've given away here and there a few things, posting from our last practice together. But we kept a lot of the surprises to ourselves. So, yeah, hopefully people will be excited by what we have chosen to play, and we'll have a great time. I hope so.
What's the lineup going to be? Or can you share that?
As far as who's playing in the band?
Yeah. Who's playing?
Sure. Well, I'm on one guitar. It's essentially everyone who had something to do with That Within Blood Tempered.
Beautiful.
It's me on guitar, Matt Fletcher on bass guitar. He, like I said earlier, he wrote lyrics for That Within Blood Tempered, and the thrash part that Dylan was talking about in the song Scornful, Fletcher actually wrote that riff too. So he wrote music and lyrics for Blood Tempered. Geert wrote lyrics and music for That Within Blood Ill Tempered, and he obviously sang on the record. He'll be there. And the drummer on That Within Blood Ill Tempered is our friend Tony Tintari, who we haven't played with in I guess over 20 years now. And the first time we played with him was just, like I said, a week or so ago. So those are the guys from That Within Blood Ill Tempered. And furthermore, Eric Dellin, he didn't contribute musically to the record. But this is right about the time when we started becoming like really good friends. And yeah, we didn't like him as a drummer, but we liked him as a person. So we kept him around. But Dellin was there in the studio with us, and he is all over the record vocally. That's right around the time we found out. And I think also that he found out that he had a great voice. And, we loved his voice so much that we had him back geared up on so many places on the record. So essentially, this lineup is everybody who helped to create in some form or fashion That Within Blood Ill Tempered.
Wow. So no Jay on this show.
No, Jay opened a barbershop in California. He moved out there. So I don't know if he'll be at Furnace Fest. I haven't talked to him in a couple months. Hopefully it would be nice to see him. But as far as the lineup, it's myself, Eric, Matt Fletcher, Geert, and Tony Tintari.
Beautiful.
Well, Eric, just so you know, last time we saw Shai Hulud, Jay was doing vocals, and so you got to get a lot more tattoos. I mean, maybe you have a lot, but that guy is head to toe in tats. And by the way, you're gonna have to be out in the crowd the entire time, because last time we saw him, he was basically in the crowd the entire time. Should we jump into guilty pleasures, Cullen?
Do it to it, Mace.
All right. Well, Matt, we already kind of prepped you on this. Guilty pleasures, the way we think of this is not necessarily that you feel guilty listening to these musicians or bands, but that, maybe like your friends or people in like your metal community would make fun of you for. Okay. So again, as an example, I love Train. Drops of Jupiter, or Hey Soul Sister comes on.
That's the right
I'm
facial expression.
Jumping
there,
in the
Eric.
dance pit. Cullen loves ABBA. ABBA comes on, Dancing Queen comes on, Cullen is going all out. So think of those kind of like artists for you that like people would either make fun of you for, or maybe you kind of secretly feel guilty about listening to. But think of those like three artists that you're really into that, maybe you're made fun of for, or kind of feel guilty about. So
just a quick little anecdote about Blood Ill Tempered and ABBA. I wrote.
Oh, is there a connection?
There is a connection. I wrote a riff that a modified version of it ended up in the song Scornful, the first song on Blood Ill Tempered. And I wrote this riff that I was so proud of. And I ran up to our bass player's room. At the time, Fletcher was still on guitar, and our bass player was a friend of ours named Jared. So I ran up to Jared's room and I said, check out this simple but awesome riff I wrote. And he looks at me and he says, you're kidding, right? And I said, no, what, you don't like it? And he said, that's Dancing Queen. Apparently, I had written the melody of Dancing Queen, and I'd never heard the song before. I had no idea.
What? How is that even possible?
I'll give you the answer that I always give when somebody, particularly Steve Klysath, is marveling at the idea that I don't know these songs that the whole world knows. My canned response is always, it wasn't on any of my Nuclear Assault cassettes. and it's funny, but it's true, because that's what I listen to. So, that guy, Steve and I were talking just the other night, and he couldn't believe that I didn't know Greg Kinn, the guy who just died, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Do you guys know who he is?
I heard the name.
Yeah, well, probably wasn't on your Nuclear Assault cassettes either. Anyway, he couldn't believe that I didn't know his most popular song, a song called The Breakup Song. And, he had me play it, and I listened to it, and I go, yeah, I never know it. I didn't know it. He goes, how did you never know it? To which I said, it wasn't on any of my Nuclear Assault cassettes. How could I know these things that weren't on the things that I was listening to? But anyway, at risk of going on too long, guilty pleasures. The first, and just to echo what you said, Mason, I don't feel guilty about anything that I genuinely like. At one point, another quick little anecdote. At one point, I didn't hate Weezer like I do now. And I felt guilty about not hating them, but I came around. Now I hate them. So that's fine. But the first quote unquote guilty pleasure that I can come up with is Enya. I absolutely
hell yeah.
Okay.
Give me some Orinoco flow.
Yeah, I absolutely adore Enya.
Yeah.
I love Enya. Going back to what we said about being like positive and typically in a good mood, I can only listen to metal when I'm in a good mood, or at least just a fine mood. But some people like to put on metal when they're angry or stressed or something. I can't listen to metal when I'm in that state. So when I'm feeling less than perfect, I usually go to Philip Glass or Enya. So Enya's one. Another one.
Great guilty pleasure, by the way.
What's that?
That's a perfect guilty pleasure.
Okay. Well, I love Enya. My next one would be, so anyone that knows me knows that I love this band. And I've said on many occasions that they're in my top probably 2 favorite bands of all time. And that's They Might Be Giants.
Oh, great band. Yeah.
Certainly a band that the metal community wouldn't, expect a guy who listened to Nuclear Assault and Testament.
They're the ones that like have an unbelievable prolific discography. Like they release an album like every other year,
and they have
every year for many years.
They even have like these secret albums that are available only certain places that I've never heard. I mean, to know their entire catalog would be absolutely impossible. But right up there with Metallica would be the Dead Milkmen. There's another one. The Dead Milkmen is also one of my favorite bands, but that I'm speaking about They Might Be Giants. They Might Be Giants is absolutely up there with Metallica. Again, not guilty at all because I absolutely think they're brilliant. Thirdly, the last one that I can think of is going to be just a genre, and that's musicals. I love Grease.
Do you have one in particular that's your favorite?
Absolutely. It's Little Shop of Horrors is my absolute.
Oh, great. Great call.
My absolute favorite musical of all time. The movie is probably, if not my absolute favorite, one of my all-time favorite movies. So yeah, musicals in general, but Little Shop is at the top of the heap, but there's also The Wiz, there's Grease, there's Phantom of the Opera.
Phantom of the Opera.
Yeah,
that's my bread and butter.
I used to sound check playing Phantom, and I think in all of this is when Shai Hulud first started. And once in the early years, after so many times playing Phantom, only one time someone came up to me after the show and said, "I like your Phantom sound check," which I was.
So what you're trying to say is that you like playing David Gilmour's riff.
David Gilmour,
yeah, from Pink Floyd. So Andrew Lloyd Webber stole the Phantom of the da, 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 that whole like descending riff.
Yeah,
he stole it from David Gilmour.
Okay,
in the song Echoes.
I was not aware of that, but the part that I would play was the main theme, the da 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 da.
Oh yeah,
yeah. Yep. So those are my 3: Enya, They Might Be Giants, and if you want to just single it out, Little Shop of Horrors. Absolutely
love it.
That's a great list.
Oh, thanks.
Matt, when we see each other at Furnace Fest, we're going to talk some musicals together.
Sounds good. And I don't know enough about musicals. Like there's so many classic ones that people who know I love musicals are saying, "How do you not know this one?" So you could probably teach me a few things.
Well, and likewise.
I'll be honest, I hate musicals. Just I can't do them. I don't like the idea. Like even just ideologically, I don't like the idea of bringing along the plot through music. That just is not something I can enjoy.
Yeah, Les Mis kind of gets on my nerves sometimes when that happens.
Yeah, I just can't do that. Even my as a kid, as a like 4-year-old, my least favorite parts of every Disney movie was when they started to break out into song.
Oh, you're
I'm
crazy.
Like,
Come on.
Get through. I'm like,
Come
they're catchy.
on.
They're catchy. I know them all.
You have no
and
heart.
Also, as a 4-year-old, even I was like, good grief, let's just get through this and figure out what the next part of the plot is.
I definitely get that. I think that I felt that way for a long time, but I was a theater major back in college, and I think that's when I really got turned on to musicals.
Yeah, well, they kind of go in tandem. If you're gonna be a theater major, you can't help but not enjoy at least a few musicals.
That's true.
But all right, what would you guys like to plug? Obviously, Furnace Fest. Is there a potential for any kind of new music or anything of that sort?
Well,
it's been we're coming up on a decade.
Yeah, it's a long time. I have a ton of riffs and ideas. Dylan has even contributed some fantastic musical ideas. It's just a matter, we need to get through Furnace Fest and finish practicing the songs and making sure we're ready to go for that. But once that's done, we'll start piecing together some newer material that Geert has expressed interest.
Nice.
So yeah, most likely we'll do something. What it will be, I can't say for sure, but it will be with Geert on. If we do anything, it'll be with Geert on vocals. So
wow.
No tentative date, no nothing at the moment. It's all just a collection of riffs. But very, very slowly, at a snail's pace, things are being worked on.
Killer. And Zombie Apocalypse, we got that going on and stuff like that. It's great stuff. So, anything else you guys would like to plug?
Oh, no, just Zombie Apocalypse. The new record is pretty awesome. I listen to it a lot. I really, really enjoy it. It's easy for me to listen to Zombie Apocalypse because it's not just my ideas. Like, I don't listen to Shai Hulud because so much of it is me. It's like looking in a mirror, and I don't want to do that. So with Zombie Apocalypse, there's so many other people's contributions that it's easy for me to listen to. There's a lot to enjoy. So yeah, without taking up too much more time, a new Zombie Apocalypse record is on the way. Hopefully next year. So
hell yeah,
I'm looking forward to it for sure.
Hell yeah!
What an exciting time in y'all's lives.
Oh, yeah.
Great.
Well, we're looking forward to it too, and yeah, it should be a hell of a time, both obviously for Shai Hulud and Zombie Apocalypse.
Yay.
Love it. Sweet. Well, thank you so much for chatting more about Shai Hulud. Obviously, again, we're really excited for whatever could potentially happen with you all in Shai Hulud, over the next maybe year or two with, writing and, hopefully maybe recording at some point. Obviously, we're really looking forward to the Zombie Apocalypse album coming out soon, and more than anything, we're gonna see you in a couple months, and basically, what is it, probably almost like 6 weeks from now, 7 weeks from now, so we'll see you, and we're super excited to see Shai Hulud play at Furnace Fest. So thank you again for chatting a little bit more about Shai Hulud.